I've always kind of seen people think of the Terminator as it's just a dumb action movie that was good for its time, but it's not worth paying too much attention. And I think that's exactly wrong. I think this movie is how you do an action movie. And I think it kind of straddles the line between action and horror as well, because the Terminator is primarily a source of fear, right? The fear that you'll never be safe again. Like, just from a script writing standpoint, from a character standpoint, from a thematic standpoint, it does everything right. Everything you would want out of a movie. Even 40 years later, it all works. Right? I don't think there's very much where I have to kind of ignore what I'm seeing in order to enjoy it. And not many movies from any era can say that about themselves, right? Like, this movie just works.
And I actually don't think the story is too complex as well. I don't think that they're like doing anything that's like out of the ordinary, or sort of something that is difficult to replicate in terms of like how to sort of kind of like naturally progress the story and how to naturally sort of kind of like progress your sort of characters from one place to another. It's just simple, and that's part of the problems I have with like some modern sort of action movies, where it's like too much action. I think we like famously, like, I had like a really bad reaction to The Beekeeper at the start of the year when that came out, where it just seemed like nothing really made sense within the story, and we were just getting like all this action stuff. And for me as a person, I don't really like, obviously you want to enjoy sort of good action in the movie, but it's not sort of what I'm there for. It's not the primary thing that I'm there for. And I think, again, like you mentioned, like as a person that doesn't really care for action too much of the action stuff in this, like this movie was a great movie, like away from the action, away from like the effects, away from all of that. It's just a really good, simple story. And again, it doesn't need to be anything complex like a Dune or something like that. It doesn't need to be that. It's just a simple story. You have likable characters. It progresses sort of in a logical way, and then everything else is a bonus.
And I also think this movie shows the difference between a complex movie and a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because this movie has no subplots. It doesn't really have side characters. Everything is in service of the conflict between Sarah Connor, the Terminator, and Kyle Reese. And everything else kind of is there to support that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's no fat to, like, what scene would you cut if you had to cut it, right? What line would you remove? Like, there's maybe a few that are maybe not entirely essential, but they all work towards this one goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is why it has stood the test of time so much, and that is why it's so enjoyable, because there's just no nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one idea, and we're going to do this idea, and we're going to do it as close to flawless as you can, and still be a real movie.
They could have easily got distracted with like the whole police stuff, because like you'll see in like certain movies they'll have police as like additional characters that they're like also like on this chase to trying to catch the Terminator, while the Terminator is kind of trying to catch Sarah Connor, and then it could potentially have been a distraction in this movie. Whereas like the police
you can have more characters. You can have, I don't know what. You could have a side plot where Kyle Reese kind of interacts with consumer culture or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can imagine stuff you could add to this movie, or other characters or something.
Yeah.
And it's just not there. Like, if it's not essential, then it's not there. And I think it's really like what I imagine a perfect script to be, because there's nothing there that's in the way. There's nothing that distracts. It's all just one thing, and it tries to do that as good as it can.
No, agreed.
And that's a rare thing in movies, right? Like, a lot of the time, movies are these chaotic things with too many cooks, and things are there because they're obligatory, or because a focus group said they should be there. Or this is just one or two people sat down, had an idea, hashed out a plot, and then made a movie based on that plot. And it's one of the great classics of the genre, of the industry, of the medium.
No comedic relief necessary here.
No, like, there's no comic relief character. There's no bad jokes. Nothing's dated, right? Like, if this movie had been made in the 2000s, you can imagine the kind of jokes that would be in there, and that would be dated within 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. Nothing like that is here. It's very much a product of its time, and I think it would be a very different movie if it had been made in the 90s or in the 2000s. But there's nothing in it. I don't think there's anything in there that's dated.